Last Concorder, I do indeed, and I'm happy to speak briefly on this bill here this evening. The road traffic, all-terrain vehicle and Scrambler motorcycle amendment bill, and compliment my colleagues here from Fianna Fáil bringing it forward, because it's a very, very worthy bill, and it's a very, very necessary bill, and none of us are killjoys. I want to be killjoys, but we have to deal with this. Dangerous vehicles, they're not ties, they're very, very dangerous. While I certainly sympathise with any community or a state that is experiencing antisocial activity related to kind of Scrambler or quad activity, we have heard here this evening, I do believe that the bill is a step maybe too far, and is not proportionate, and it's very hard to get a balance, of course, right in any kind of legislation. The bill proposes to make further provisions for the seizure by an Garda Síochána of said vehicles and motorcycles in certain circumstances, to provide for the confiscation and disposal of the same where a person contravenes the law in relation to the use of both all-terrain vehicles and Scrambler motorcycles in a public place. And that they have no place really in a public place. So to get the legislation right and get the legislation implemented and enforced, is another issue. Because I'm from a rural background. I actually own a quad from mountain hill sheep farming. You'll be very familiar with that yourself, Last Concord and the hills and slopes of Donegal. A very necessary tool, but an extremely, extremely dangerous equipment. And indeed, there are many people, former president of the IFA, I remember one time broke his leg off with. They're a very, very dangerous weapon. And we talk about bulls on farms and indeed rams and things that cause trouble. But these machines, operated by the wrong people on land and in rough terrain, are just so dangerous, because they have such a traction and such powerful grip on the ground. They literally would go up those steps there beside your minister and tumble back on top of somebody, and there's been many fatalities and many injuries. Different altogether what Deputy Gunn and others are trying to do with this, but they are, while a necessary tool and an invaluable tool in inclement weather like snow and everything else, to get around and to get out to assess, crops and indeed animals in times of bad weather, but they have to be treated with the utmost of respect. But this bill, as I said, it's so important that in public places, in parks, and indeed in recreation areas, they have to be. First of all, people should have a licence to drive them. And that meaning that they would have a minimum of a provisional licence, that they would have done some theory tests. And I would see a role for the schools as well to bring in, and people say it's fine. I met a principal recently and he said to me, oh yeah, file everything back on the schools, and schools should do this and schools should do that, but there needs to be a holistic education, like there has been with animals, to inform young people the dangers of these. They look great, they see them on television and they see different kinds of films around scrambling in the mountains or whatever, and they want to be able to be part of it. Wonderful activity, but the inherent dangers are just incredible. And I know a number of young people who are paralysed after serious accidents, and we're fundraising to try and get them, to get rehab care and try and get recovery, and some of them will never again walk. Certainly will never again get up on a quad or a bike. So we need to be very, 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 careful in how and where we use them. So certainly legislation is needed, but implementation of that legislation is needed, because, you can't expect a Garda Síochána on the beat, or indeed in a squad car, to follow these vehicles. The speed and the sheer way in which they are able to escape and move away from a situation if they're causing trouble in somebody's parkland, that just will literally go over ditches that height and will just be gone without a trace. All you get is the smells of the fumes from the exhausts, and while it activates a run of adrenaline to the young people there and maybe the supporters, it's so dangerous. And we've heard of evidence where people have been lying on beaches and been driven over, lying on parkland and been driven over. It's just extremely reckless. reckless, and it must be stamped out. And you know, it's so important that we recognise the danger of these vehicles and the potential damage that they can do. While, as I said, on the agricultural side of it, or indeed other activities on farm, there are also dangers there too, and young people get access to them in their own family farms, and that's very, very dangerous. So in this situation, I believe, you know, I don't know how we're going to police it, but it has to be policed, and it has to be taught and educated to respect the inherent dangers, to the sheer power of them, and the speed at which they can travel, and above all the damage they can do. Because if you come off one of those at 20 miles an hour, not to mind say 30 or 50 miles an hour, you have no protection whatsoever. So I feel for the situation here in Dublin. I only have anecdotal evidence of what happens, but it's just, and other cities and towns, it's just something that we have to deal with. And we also have to have, and the RSA, and Minister Ross is very fond of the RSA and giving them sweeping powers in many areas, whether it comes to tractors or cars or young drivers or whatever. I mean, I go to shows and at different events, and we see all these quads. I was at one even on Sunday, little bikes and quads for sale, and kids love to buy them or whatever. It seems like anyone can buy them, and there's no restrictions. So we have to do some investigation there into that kind of a situation, and to make sure they're not purchased. They're not purchased as birthday presents, or they're not purchased as Christmas presents, and given, because all of us, I suppose, need to be re-educated and evaluate the potential hazards and dangers they can cause. And indeed, you know, it's to get a balance between, I suppose, the right to have a mechanically propelled vehicle and the rights of safety of other amenity users. And people who want to, you know, go out and into recreation areas without the noise, the fumes, the fear, and indeed, above all, the speed and the thrill-seeking that goes on with them. So, lest people think that I'm anti-quad or anti-that for family purposes, I'm not. But we need extreme caution, extreme care, and the RSA need to wake up, Minister, and deal with these mechanically propelled vehicles. And indeed, Minister, you're not a good example yourself. I did see you sometime recently in a publication, and I'm all for the simulator vehicles that they have, the RSA have at road shows, to show young people how they can get seriously injured in a car turning over, a car, especially without a seatbelt. But they also have signs up, very clear, legible signs, Minister, that you can't go on these, you're under 16 or over 60. And I saw a picture of you inside in it, Minister. So what a way to give education to young people, to show that a man, I don't know what age you are, but you're certainly well over 60 anyway, as I'm that myself, and you're around a lot longer than I am. You should know better than to be reckless and to go on that simulator, and there was a sign up in front of it, clearly stating. So what image are you giving out to young people? Oh, he can do it. That guy up in Dublin who hates the rural island, who hates the ordinary people going for a pint, who hates people who want to get a licence to go to school or college. And here he is, reckless, upside down inside in a simulator. I think it's outrageous that you would be so reckless to ignore the signs. And we're here trying to get legislation, but that's not new with you. You've been reckless since you became Minister for Transport, and the sooner this government falls and disbands and you're out of it, the better. And good riddance to bad rubbish it'll be as regards the ministry, not personal to you, but pure reckless that you would go into that machine, which is brought to schools, brought to sites and shows to advise young people the dangers, and here we were inside it. Here's the thrill seeker. Minister Shane Ross, new thrill. My goodness. Wasn't very thrilling, but it's downright stupidity and downright bizarre and downright reckless, and you're the Minister for Transport. But listen, there we are, Shinskale Ella, and that's why you're keeping the government in place. So I think you need to get a few training courses as well to respect the legislation that's printed up in front of you. Deputy.